Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world. And welcome to today's Stop the Busyness webinar. This webinar is brought to you by Simpletivity, and our focus for the next 30 minutes or so is going to be on email, specifically how to combat the three evils of email. My name is Scott Friesen, and I'm the founder of Simpletivity. And I like to address myself as a busyness killer. What exactly does that mean? Busyness killer. Well, it absolutely pains me to hear how many people complain about how busy they are. I'm so busy, I'm too busy. When I ask people, how is work going? Almost automatically, the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, busy. I'm just so busy. And I have a problem with that because there's a difference between being busy and being productive. Anyone can be busy. You don't need experience or education to be a busy individual, but you do need some focus. You do need some discipline to be a productive person, to be a productive worker. So I'm here to kill the busyness, or at least prevent the busyness, and help steer people into a more productive work day. I help individuals and organizations to focus on their most important work. And that's really what Simpletivity is all about, helping people stop the busyness and be the most productive that they can be. As a part of today's webinar, I encourage you to ask questions. If you're watching this live, you can use the live chat window here on YouTube, or you can also post your questions or thoughts on Twitter using the hashtag #StopTheBusy. Encourage you to do so throughout the webinar, and I'll reserve a little bit of time near the end to answer some of those questions. So, email, it's been with us in the business world for roughly 20 years. Email came into the world of business in the mid to late 90s. It became an essential form of communicating with one another, whether that's with our teammates, with our fellow colleagues, with potential clients. Email has remained with us over that 20-year period. And it's interesting, even though other forms of communication have come and taken much prominence, email still seems to be such a great focus of our day-to-day work. Now, you probably spend a lot of time texting, and texting certainly has become increasingly popular as a form of immediate communication. But chances are you are not texting with people that you don't know well. Most of your texts are probably with friends, family members, and direct colleagues, not potential clients, not people that you don't know well. We're not throwing our mobile numbers around to just anyone who asks. Email is still a more convenient option for those first introductions. Now, instant messaging has been around essentially as long as email has, and you may use instant messaging in some way, form, or another as a part of your workday, particularly within your organization or within your company. Perhaps you use a tool such as Basecamp or Salesforce or Trello, where you can message with other members of your team in real time. Yet, studies show, as recently as last year, that we still use email for 48% of our business communication. It remains the most dominant form of communication within the business world. You can sum up your texting, your instant messaging, your phone call, your in-person conversations, and nothing compares to email. It's still the most frequent use of communicating with our teammates and with our clients outside of our organization. So today, we're going to look at the three evils of email, three areas of email management that I find are a common problem for most people. One, we're going to talk about inbox overload. And most people are not willing to share their inboxes with too many other people, what it looks like, how busy they are within their inbox. We're going to look at inbox overload. We're going to look at message management and what is some of the more effective and efficient ways of managing messages that we have already read, things that we've already replied to, things that we have already dealt with. And lastly, a major problem is how frequently we interact with email. Some of us just constantly checking our email every other minute, every spare moment that we have. How can we prevent the amount of time we engage with email, yet be very effective still with our role and the way that we contribute to our customers or to our team? So let's start with evil number one, inbox overload. As I just mentioned, I would be surprised if you would be willing to take a screenshot of your inbox and share it with the rest of the world. Most of us have hundreds, sometimes thousands of emails waiting in our inbox. And I don't just mean unread emails. You may receive a large quantity of email each and every day, but a lot of us use our inbox as our sole component of our email client. It's where our emails not only live, where they start their life, but it's also where they go to die. They end up overcrowding our inbox. It can be hard to sift through what is a new message and what is an unread message. Is there a read message that I still need to deal with? So how can we help prevent inbox overload? Well, I think it's precisely that mix of new messages and old messages which get to be a huge problem in most of our workdays. Let me give you an example. I'm going to use snail mail or traditional mail as that example. You know what I'm talking about: paper, envelopes, postage stamps. We don't receive much of this anymore, but I'm sure you still have a mailbox somewhere that you go and check once in a while. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever gone to your physical mailbox, taken out all of the mail within the mailbox, and let's say you have 10 letters that day. You open up each and every one of those letters, you take them out, you read them in their entirety, or at least give them a good scan, and then after you've finished reading each and every message, you carefully put the letter back into its respective envelope, and then put all 10 messages back into the mailbox. Now, I'm certain that you have never done this before, and I'm quite certain you have never observed anyone else do this before either. Open up all their mail right at their mailbox, read it, and then put it right back into their mailbox. It sounds absurd. Well, that's why I think it's rather absurd when we do this with our email, when we keep read or messages that we've already dealt with within our inbox. So the solution to inbox overload is to only keep new messages in the inbox. Once you've dealt with it, you need to put it somewhere else. Once you've replied to it, once you've created that calendar event, or you've done whatever other task is associated with that email, you need to put it somewhere else. You want to have the confidence that every time you come back to your inbox, it's only new messages that are waiting for you. So once you've dealt with it, you need to put it somewhere else. Your inbox should only be for new messages. Now, you're probably asking, well, what do I do with the remaining messages? Where do I put them? Well, that leads us right to evil number two, something that weighs a lot of us down, and that is message management. A couple of questions that most people have. One, where should I put read email? What's the most effective use of my time so I can still deal with it later? Which flags or labels should I be using? I've got all these color-coded options. Some email clients even allow you to add emojis and other such flags to highlight certain messages. Which ones should I use? Should I even be using them at all? And another feature that is appearing in more and more email clients is the ability to snooze a message. I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about snoozing messages. If you're not familiar with what this functionality is, many email clients, such as Inbox by Gmail, will allow you to bring back a message to your inbox and treat it as unread mail sometime in the future. So the feature usually works something like this. You open up a new message, an unread message. You say to yourself, I don't want to deal with this right now. Perhaps it's not urgent. I want to bring this back to my inbox 2 days from now. So it gives you the option, and you have more choices than just 2 days. You can bring it back later that day, next week. Usually there's several options as to how long you snooze the message. And then when the time is up, it will reappear in your inbox as an unread email. I caution people to be very, very careful with the snooze function, because you are already receiving probably more email than you would like in your inbox. And by snoozing a message, you're simply just deferring that email to a later date. If you receive 100 emails a day, that may be much more than you actually receive. That actually might be a lot less than some of you receive. But let's say you're averaging 100 received email messages a day. If you start snoozing a bunch of those messages, well, now it's going to appear as if you're averaging 110, 120, maybe 150 emails a day, because you're deferring so many of these messages until later. The best solution, if you don't want to deal with it right now, is to make a note of it or transfer it to a task list. Maybe add it to your calendar as a reminder instead of continually rereading and coming back to that message over and over again. But another huge area when it comes to message management where we waste a lot of our time is by filing our emails, by keeping some complicated structure of subfolders and other folders where we put each and every one of our read emails. Now, I've worked with people who've had as many as 70, nearing 100 different folders for their read emails. And they get into a habit of, whether the email is important or not, they place each and every email they read into its specific folder. Now, time and time again, when I ask these same individuals, how often do you go back and make use of those folders? Their answer is often never or very, very seldom. A lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted time as people file each and every one of their emails into these folders and subfolders. Well, the solution is simpler than it sounds. No, it's very simple. It's archiving message as an alternative. And here's why. Search within our email clients have become so much more powerful than they were just as little as 10 years ago. If you need to find an email, something in the past, type in a keyword, type in the domain name, type in the email address of the person, type in a company name, and I can guarantee you, you will not have to search more than twice to find the email that you're looking for. There was a time in the early days of email where it was probably a smart idea to file each and every one of your emails, to put them away. But no matter whether you use Gmail, whether you use Outlook, whether you use some other client, each has an archive function built in. They're not gone. They're not deleted. They're still searchable. You can still retrieve them. Get into the habit of archiving your emails. Evil number 3, constant checking. Checking our email throughout the day from morning all the way till we retire to our beds at night. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You wake up in the morning, first thing, you grab your smartphone and you check your email. It can be an easy habit to get into since many of us use our smartphones as our morning alarm. So you start your day in email, maybe even before you get out of bed. As you're preparing breakfast, you check email a few more times, maybe on the commute into work. You check email. What's the first thing that most people do when they get into the office? Open up their email. And they leave it open all day long. And I don't just mean keep the application open for the entire day. I mean, they actually keep it visible. They keep their email inbox visible the entire day. They try and step away, maybe for a quick break. They glance at their email. You take a short lunch. You glance at your email. Before you head into a meeting, you check your email. While you're in the meeting, you check your email. As soon as the meeting's over, you check your email. It's this constant checking, whether it's on our mobile devices, on our laptops, on our desktops, constantly checking. Have we received new messages? The short answer is yes. You are receiving emails throughout the day. Do they all need to be addressed immediately? No. We get pulled back and forth between email and our most important work. And then we get to the end of the day and we wonder why we've accomplished so little, or at least not as much as we had hoped to. We bounce back and forth between our inbox and between getting just 5 or 10 minutes on that big project or that issue that we are supposed to solve. And yet email seems to be such a huge distraction. It gets in the way of so much of our most important work. Well, my solution to you today is a simple one, but it may not be the easiest one to implement. Setting aside dedicated time just for email. I mean, setting aside as little as 30 minutes, but 30 dedicated minutes to email in the morning, perhaps another 30 to 45 minutes around noon or lunchtime, and then one more 30-minute session later in the evening. And only spending 2 or 3 times with your inbox at a time. Now, I don't mean that you only send email during these periods of time or between 2 or 3 periods throughout your workday. If you need to send an email, go ahead and send an email. There's no hesitations on when you send a piece of communication. But we have gotten so caught up in how often, how frequently we need to be checking our inboxes. Often we think that things are more urgent than they really are. And this may require you to have a conversation with your team, with your manager, and possibly even your clients. But things that are truly urgent, things that are really important, things that are a crisis and need your attention, should be reserved for a phone call, should be reserved maybe for your instant messaging client that you already use with your team or your organization. If you work in the same office, a true emergency might require you or the other individual to approach you at their desk. Too often we try to solve things via email and suddenly everything is urgent. Suddenly everything is a crisis. Now, many of you are probably saying this is unrealistic. There's no way I could only spend 3 separate sessions with my inbox. Well, one, there are thousands of people who do just this each and every day. Number 2, I'd ask you, how many minutes do you think you spend with email each and every day? I would estimate you spend no more than 90 minutes to 2 hours with email. And I mean actually dealing with email. I don't mean just browsing the subject line as you scroll through your inbox. I mean actually reading emails, actually replying and writing emails. It seems, or it may seem, that you spend a lot longer than 2 hours in email because you check it so frequently. You deal with your email so constantly. What I'm suggesting is that you take those 90 minutes or those 2 hours of email and break them into 3 dedicated periods of time. You're not doing anything else during this time. You're specifically dealing with your inbox, dealing with your email throughout those 3 periods of time. They don't need to be hard-coded. You don't need to write in 8 a.m. on your schedule or 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. and so forth. That's too strict and is not going to be flexible for your day-to-day changes and meetings and other things that pop up. But can you limit yourself to just 3 times a day for email? What could you do in between those periods? If you had 3 hours between when you first check email and when you do it again, how much more work could you accomplish? How much more focused could you and your team be in that upcoming meeting if people weren't checking their email and weren't so eager to get to their inbox as soon as the meeting was over? How much more could you get done if you gave your inbox a rest for a few hours at a time and gave dedicated specific time just for dealing with email? So, the three evil email solutions to the three areas that we looked at today. First, inbox overload. Well, the solution is to never keep read messages in your inbox. It's called an inbox for a reason. It should be where things start, but not where things end or where things go to die. Once you've read that email, deal with it. What's the next step that you need to do? Is there a next step? If not, hit archive and you can reference it or you can find it later. Never keep read messages in your inbox. The second evil, message management. Our solution is don't waste time filing. Don't keep a huge list of folders and subfolders, but use the archive feature instead. Each email client has such a feature set up. If you need assistance with that, you can possibly ask your tech administrator for your company or organization. If you use a general client, such as Gmail or Outlook Online, you can find help resources within the application itself. Don't waste your time filing each and every one. Use the archive function instead. Our search capabilities are just too good to waste your time filing the email. And then lastly, to combat constant checking of email throughout the day, make time to deal with incoming mail. Remember, this is specific time. This is dedicated time just to deal with email. The one caveat I would say to this last one, constant checking, is that if you are in a role such as customer support or client services, where the primary role of your job is to respond to email, of course, dealing with email only 3 times a day is not going to work with you. But unless you're in one of those types of client service or customer support roles, there is very little excuse to not be dealing with email less frequently than you already are. You can make dedicated time to deal with email and get through it a lot faster as well. When you batch your work together, when you condense all of your email into just a 30-minute period, you can get through so much more rather than just picking and choosing and replying here, there, and everywhere throughout your day. So, as I mentioned, welcome your questions. If you are not watching this live, you can still use the hashtag #StopTheBusy, and I will see your questions and other comments on Twitter. We have a few here already. Let's see if I can address a couple. One is, when are the best times to check email if I only do it 3 times per day? So it's a great question. I suggest not making specific or at least calendar times for your email. And the reason why is that our days are just too dynamic to put them right on your calendar and to block out that time for email. A greater suggestion would be to give yourself sort of a window, a period in which you're going to block out time for that email. So maybe you're going to say sometime between 7 and 9 a.m. I'm going to find time to spend 30 minutes with my email. And sometime maybe between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. is going to be my second session with email. Another thing you may want to think about is, when do you receive most of your email? When do you receive more email than any other time of the day? If, for example, you receive most of your email between 10 a.m. and noon, perhaps you'll want to try and spend that time at 11:30, just before noon. Spend your solid 30 minutes or 45 minutes with your inbox so you can get through all of those questions with all that email in one sitting. So I do not recommend a specific time to deal with email. It's much too dynamic, depending on your industry, depending on your role, depending on your team. Another question we have here is, should I archive all my read email, or can I use a few folders as well? That's a great question. If there are 2 to 3 folders that are very helpful to you when it comes to managing your email, go ahead and use them. Let's say you're working on a short-term project, something that's only going to last 2 or 3 months, and this is your primary work. This is where you're going to be focusing most of your attention over the next 3 months. Maybe you find it helpful to have that folder for those specific messages. But I always say that with a word of caution, because 2 to 3 folders often leads to 5 or 6, which often leads to 17 or 29 folders in the end. And then we get back to that habit, or even if you don't have this habit, perhaps you create this habit of filing away each and every email, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's junk mail, whether it's things that you are 99% certain you will never need again. So be careful with folders. If you want to have 2 or 3 that you find most helpful, go ahead. But I'd be cautioned to go much further beyond 3 folders when it comes to filing. The search is just too good. Our search functionality is just too strong. Use archive and you'll be able to retrieve the messages that you want later. So I want to thank you for joining us for today's Simpletivity webinar. If you would like to learn more about how to check your email less frequently, how to be more effective and efficient with your inbox, I would welcome your emails. Yes, I will read them, each and every one. You can reach me at scott@simpletivity.com. If you haven't had a chance to visit our website, you can visit us at simpletivity.com. You can read more about our services. You can learn more tips and tricks of how you can be more productive and more efficient with your workday. I would also recommend you check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to the Simpletivity YouTube channel. We release at least one new video on a weekly basis, usually a short 2 or 3 minute video to give you a tip on how to be more efficient, how to be more productive, how to get more done in a shorter amount of time. So I want to thank you so much for your attendance today in this month's Stomp the Busyness webinar. I hope to see you again soon, and don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again. It's very simple.